Well, let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about Napier's outlook, where we go in the 2024 season. So we talked a little bit off camera before we started, and we both kind of agreed that there's just not a lot of juice in the fan base right now. And it's kind of hard to see how we could get juice prior to kickoff in August. But, our fans, I mean, rightfully so, right? To feel like they do.
Oh, they're frustrated, and I don't blame them. And what happened last season is not acceptable at Florida. What happened the season before with the number 4 pick in the draft at quarterback going 6-6 is unacceptable at Florida. I know we always talk about Florida fans having unrealistic expectations. I've been guilty of saying that plenty of times because I do feel like the expectations are sometimes unrealistic.
Sure.
But I also understand that's what they are. That's one thing I always try to explain to people, whether we're talking about Florida or Tennessee or Texas A&M or Nebraska or any place where the fans feel like the team needs to be better and the fan support is really good, the resources are good. You can't make excuses for being mediocre.
Right.
You just can't be mediocre. And so it's one thing when Florida fans are mad when the team has won 10 games.
Right.
It's a completely different situation when the team has won 6 or 5. Like, that is completely justified.
Yeah.
And I think the problem now is the game has changed because of of NIL and the change in the transfer rules, the combination of those two things happening at once. And this is one of those, I don't necessarily blame Billy Napier for this or blame Scott Strickland for this. This happened at the time Billy Napier was getting hired. No one knew exactly what was going to happen going forward. And so Billy Napier, the way he's been trying to build this program, would have worked great in 2010. Yeah. Would have been fantastic because you get better, raw material coming in than you had coming in before. You stack that for 2-3 years. And by year 3, year 4, you've got a really good team that can compete with anybody.
Yeah.
The problem is now when you are failing or when you are mediocre, those players leak out year by year because they can. Like Trevor Etienne, Princely Van Mielen, like those guys would not have left in the old system.
Right.
But when you see that happening and you go year to year, you're not having a net improvement of your talent. Like Florida's talent has basically been static across the 3 years of the Billy Napier tenure.
Right.
That's not going to work. You're just getting the same results again. And there's no way they could have known that everything would change.
Sure.
But unfortunately for them, everything changed. That's the system now. You've seen guys come in and flip rosters immediately, like Kalen DeBoer at Washington. Kalen DeBoer took over a 4-8 team at Washington. He won 10 games the first year. He went to the national title game the second year. Don't tell me that after being given all this stuff, you can't do that, or that's too hard to do at Florida, or you got to give somebody 5 years. No, the right guy doesn't need 5 years.
Yeah, the right guy wins. So we open with Miami, which this was something else we talked about right before this started. And, these are two programs kind of in the same spot, right? They've got coaches going into year 3, both of them seen as really good, strong recruiters, both of them underperforming record-wise. Do you have early thoughts on this game?
As far as the game itself, no. Because what I'm curious to see with Miami is they had that big offensive line recruiting class in 2023. Maui Noah started immediately. Samson Okinola didn't, but he's supposed to start this year. So, and then this year they bring in the big D-line class. Like, I don't expect the freshman D linemen to be have much of an impact. Just like probably shouldn't expect LJ McCray or DJ Lagway to have a huge impact for Florida on a game like this. But I do think that Miami offensive line could be a little bit better. And, as that group gets better, that's one of those position groups where if you are just more talented than the teams you're playing, you are going to get good results no matter what is going on, like forgetting to take a knee or whatever coaching issues you may have on field. So The Cam Ward thing, I don't know. He takes over quarterback from Miami.
Yeah.
Was at Washington State before. Won't be hard for him to learn the offense. This is his third school, but he'll be playing in essentially the same offense at all three schools, because Shannon Dawson is an air raid guy. So I think he'll probably figure that out quickly. The thing I selfishly, as someone who does shows about college football, look forward to at this game is whoever loses, that fan base is going to completely melt down. It is going to be the end of the freaking world, because whether Miami wins and Florida people feel this way, or Florida wins and Miami people feel this way, the overwhelming sentiment is going to be, well, if we can't beat those guys, what's the rest of the year going to look like?
Is this the most important game so far in the Napier tenure?
Yes, but unfortunately for Billy, that just every couple weeks that's going to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they do have a really, really tough schedule in 2024, and the over-under right now is 5.5 wins. Do you think Florida hits that number? Is that number logical given the schedule?
Yeah, I think it's very logical. I think 5-7 or 6-6 is about where it should be. Like, that's when I look at the schedule, because it's interesting, because I see a lot of people say, "Oh, Florida's going to start off 5-0."
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think that.
Yeah.
Like, Miami's going to be tough. That's a coin flip. Texas A&M's going to be pretty tough this year. I think Mike Elko is going to be a lot better coach than Jimbo Fisher for Texas A&M.
And
so,
they're very familiar with us too.
The other one, now at Tennessee, obviously they've figured out how to win in Knoxville.
Sure.
They can't win in Gainesville yet, but they figured out how to win in Knoxville. So this one's in Knoxville. So that one's your winner. But the one before that, the UCF game, UCF's going to be pretty good. Like, KJ Jefferson, who led a terrible Arkansas team to a win in the Swamp last year, is their quarterback now. And I would venture to say that this UCF team is probably going to be better than that Arkansas team was.
Can you imagine if UCF beats Florida? If you want to talk about a fan base having a meltdown.
Oh, that would be it. That would be just a complete fan base wide implosion. It would be a smoking crater where the Swamp used to be.
Oh my gosh, it would be insane. We talk about this 2024 schedule and keep saying, hardest schedule in the country. But when you look at it and you look at the breakdown of schools that are breaking in new quarterbacks or new coaches or some combination of both of those things, do you think that we think it looks so intimidating because of the place that Florida is at more so than what the actual teams on the schedule say?
Oh, no. If this were Alabama's schedule, everybody would think this is a brutal schedule. But the thing is, and I was talking to somebody about this with Notre Dame the other day, because everybody thinks the Notre Dame schedule is like the easiest Notre Dame schedule in the past 20 years. Mm-hmm. And like, you got to think, whether you think the schedule is super hard or super easy, some of the teams that you think are going to be awesome are going to stink.
Yeah.
And some of the teams that you may think stink are going to be pretty good. They're going to be better. So I would venture guess on Florida's schedule, there will probably be a couple teams that we are looking at now like, oh, that's definitely a loss. That by the time you get to that game, you're like, oh, I think Florida might be able to win that game.
Yeah. So let's say Napier only wins the 5 or 6 games that Vegas thinks that Florida's going to win. Is there a way for him to survive?
No.
For year 4?
Absolutely not. No. They'll find the money and they'll pay the buyout. There'll be a different AD making the hire. Like, that's everybody who works in the business knows that. There's no question that will not work going forward. They're not going to just stick with that. There's a new president at Florida. Ben Sass is interested in sports, whereas Kent Fox, the old guy, was not.
Not right.
So it will change if it doesn't get better.
Andy, it's always a pleasure. I always enjoy this. Tell everybody where they can find your work.
So On3 Sports YouTube page, hit subscribe. You can get my show every day. It'll tell you when I'm going live. I'm at 8 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. And of course, you can watch on demand anytime you want. Anywhere you get your podcast, we put out the audio of the show, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. And you find me, Andy_Staples, on your favorite social media platforms. If I ever get a 6-pack, I'll post more on Instagram, but mostly on Twitter now.
I think that's probably why I'm on Twitter too. But All right. Well, we appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us, and you have a great day.
Thanks, Allie.